Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Chaf Gimel Amud Beis, 23b of Maseches Megillah, starting from the Mishnah at the very bottom of the page. The Mishnah says, HaKorei b'Torah lo yifchos mishlosha psukim. One who reads from the Torah, one who gets an aliyah, so each aliyah must be at least 3 psukim. This is something we've mentioned already. Here's the Mishnah saying it. V'lo yikra l'meturgamang yoser mipasuk echad. Now, if you're using a meturgamar, which is a translator, where you have somebody translating each verse into Aramaic for the congregation to understand what's being read, so you should only do one verse at a time and have him translate. Then one verse and have him translate. Uvin Navi, top of the next page, but when you're reading a Haftorah from the prophets, from the Navi, Shlosha, then you can read 3, and to have him translate 3. And the point is that if the more psukim that he needs to translate, the more likely he is to err, to make a mistake. And so, if we're talking about psukim from the Torah, which have greater impact and where halacha, where the law is derived from, so then we're much more concerned about an error the meturgamon might make, so we say one pasuk at a time. But when it comes to translating the Navi, it's not as big a deal if he makes a mistake, because it doesn't lend itself to misunderstanding the halacha, because the halacha is not coming from Navi. Hayu shlashtan shalosh parshios. Now, if the 3 psukim that are being read from the Navi, you have 3 psukim in a row, which we just said you're allowed to group them together and then translate them all together, but if they are 3 separate parshas, so there's a break in the text because it's a new section, so then Koreh and Echad, they should be read one at a time. You shouldn't read from 3 separate sections and then translate all 3 together. This way we keep separate the separate parshas, the separate sections, as they're divided in the Navi. And the Gemara will bring an example of this where you have 3 psukim in a row, and each one is its own parsha. Medalgin b'Navi, ve'en medalgin b'Torah. The Mishnah says that when we're reading from Navi, from the prophets, from the Torah, so you're allowed to skip from one section to another. It doesn't have to. You're allowed to read one section and another section that's separate. Ve'en medalgin b'Torah, but you cannot skip when you're reading from the Torah. You don't skip, and Rashi explains that that's because it's like distracting, and you don't focus as well if you're reading from different sections. So when it comes to Navi, we're okay, because I guess we're not as concerned about everybody gripping on for every word, but when it comes to Torah, we want everybody fully attentive, and if we're skipping around, then a person loses attention. But for Navi, we could. Ve'ad kama hu medalik, how much are you allowed to skip ahead? Ad kadesh lo yifsok hamaturgaman. The amount that you can roll the scroll that you're reading from without having the meturgamon, the translator, complete and stop his translation. So you want to only skip to things that are kind of within a chapter or two, because your time frame, you don't want to hold up the tzibur. We're always concerned about tircha the tzibur, about holding things up. We got to keep things moving, and if everybody's waiting and you're just rolling, then that's not good. So, but if it's during the time that anyways the meturgamon, the translator, is translating, so then it's fine. So we can only skip a little bit to a section that's within range that you'll be able to get there before the meturgamon finishes his translation of the, I guess, up to 3 psukim that you just read. Okay, says the Gemara, Hani gimel psukim keneged mi. So the Mishnah said you're supposed to have 3 psukim for each person. Go yifchos mishlosh psukim. Someone gets an aliyah should not have less than 3 psukim. What do those 3 psukim correspond to? This is a question that the Gemara already raised earlier, and our Gemara says Amar Asi keneged Torah Nevi'im Uksuvim. So this we already had previously, that the 3 psukim correspond to the 3 parts of Tanakh: Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. And I guess we want, in a certain sense, our each aliyah, each person who's called to the Torah, to encompass all of Tanakh. So at least 3 psukim, one representing each section of the Tanakh. Okay, now the Mishnah said, you cannot, when it comes to Torah, you can't read more than one pasuk at a time when you're using a Meturgamon, a translator. Uvenavi gimel psukim. When it comes to Navi, reading from the prophets, reading of Torah, you can have up to 3 psukim. But if the 3 psukim are each their own parsha, their own section, you should read each one by itself, have the translator, the Meturgamon, translate it, then the next one, have him translate, and then the next one. You shouldn't read them as one chunk together. What's an example? The Gemara is asking, what's an example of a place in the Navi where we have 3 psukim in a row, and each one is its own parsha, its own section? So the example that it gives is from the book of Yeshaya, chapter 52, Parak Nun Beis, and it says there, Ki komar Hashem chinam nimkartem, so says Hashem, I sold you for nothing. Then it says in the next pasuk, Ki komar Hashem, so says Hashem Elokim, Mitzrayim Yorad Ami Barishona, my nation first went down to Mitzrayim. Okay, that's a separate section in the Navi. There's a parsha break, and then the next pasuk says Ve'ata, and now Mali Ponum Hashem. What do I have here? So says Hashem, and again that pasuk is a new parsha. It's a new section, and we have 3 psukim in a row there. That each one is a separate section. In that case, our Mishnah says in that type of case, the Meturgamon should be translating each pasuk by itself and not all of them together because they're separate parshas. We want to keep them separate. The Mishnah said, Medalgim b'Navi ve'im medalgim b'Torah, that we can skip ahead when we're reading from Navi. We shouldn't skip when we're reading from the Torah. Ask the Gemara v'Ramini, but we have a contradiction. It says that on Yom Kippur, Korah acharemos ve'ach be'asar. That on Yom Kippur, one should read from Parshas Acharemos, the beginning, which talks about the Yom Kippur service, and one should read from Ach Be'asor, which is Emor, which is Parshas Emor, where it talks about the different holidays. So there, you are reading from different parshas, different sections, and you're skipping. So Vakamedalik, but you're skipping. Now with this, I don't think this is what we actually do, but there is an opinion that says that this is what one does. So so that involves skipping. So Amar Abaye lo kashya. Abaye says that it's not a contradiction. Kan b'kedei sheyifsok hatorgaman, v'kan b'kedei shelo yifsok hatorgaman. When we say you can't skip in the Torah, or let's go the other way. When we say here in this brisa that you can skip on Yom Kippur from, I should pause that. We don't do this, but actually the Girsa of Rashi is actually that the Kohen Gadol would do this. So it's not even clear it's talking about the regular Kriyas HaTorah. It sounds like the way that we have the Girsa and Rashi is that this was something Kohen Gadol would read, and he would skip. But we have the same question now, how can you skip? We said you can't skip. So the answer is that it depends. If it's close by, and it's B'kedei Sheyifsek HaTorgamon, you can get there in time before the Meturgamon finishes translating his pasuk, so then you're fine. So apparently, even though it's a few parshas later, you can get from Charemos to Emor pretty fast. But when it says that you can't skip in the Torah, in the Mishnah, it says you cannot skip. That's talking about where you would not be able to get there in time without the Meturgamon, the translator, finishing and stopping and pausing. So the Gemara asks, what are you talking about? But the Mishnah says you can skip Navi, skip when you're reading Navi to a different section, but you cannot skip when you're reading the Torah. And that which we allow you to skip when you're reading from the Navi, how far are you allowed to skip? Ad Kadesh Yifsek HaTorgamon. Up until wherever you won't interrupt, the Meturgamon will still be going. He won't have stopped yet. Now that's talking about by Navi. Michlal, that the implication is debitora klal klal lo. That when you're reading Torah, you can't stop at all. You can't skip at all. Sorry, can't skip even in that case. Right? We're trying to say now that when did we say you're not allowed to skip? That's if it's going to cause the Meturgaman to have to stop and wait, and he's going to be done. Everybody's going to be waiting. But if you can get there in time before he finishes translating, then you're allowed to skip and roll ahead. But the Mishnah said that that's specifically for Navi. Sounds like for Torah, that's not the case. So Elamar Abaye, so Abaye says, fine, we need a new answer. Why is it that on Yom Kippur we allow the Kohen Gadol to read from two separate parshas? Says Abaye, Lo Kashi, it's not a contradiction. Kan b'inyan echad, kan b'shtei inyanos. One is where it's all the same inyan, the same idea. One is where it's separate inyanim, separate ideas. On Yom Kippur, it's all the same. It's all Yom Kippur. It's the avoda of Yom Kippur, and it's again reading about how it's observed in Parshas Emor. It's all one idea. If it's one idea, you're allowed to skip ahead. But if it's two separate ideas, then you should not skip ahead. V'hatanya, indeed, we have a brisa like this. This v'hatanya is what we call b'nichusa. It's read. It's not a question. It's a proof. V'hatanya, indeed, we have a brisa like this. It says medalgim b'Torah b'inyan echad. You're allowed to skip in the Torah as long as it's one inyan, one topic. Uven Navi b'shnei inyanin, and you can skip in the Navi if it's two different inyanim, two different topics. And kan v'kan b'kadesh l'isa kan Meturgaman. And either way, though, you can only skip if it's nearby, and you'll get there before the Meturgaman finishes translating. Tanya idach, we have another brisa. It says ing medalgim minavi l'navi. You're not allowed to skip from one book of the prophets to another book of the prophets. Uvenavi shel shnei maser medalig. But within the book of Treyasar, which is 12 small books of 12 different Nevi'im, so there you're allowed to skip from one book to another because it's like one big book. But you cannot skip backwards. You can't go backwards. You have to go forwards in the book. I guess if you go backwards, either it's just out of order, or it's just will confuse people. So that's just adding another halacha. Once we're talking about skipping, so we say that in Nevi'im you cannot skip from one book to another, but within the Treyas, or within the 12 small prophets, you're allowed to skip from one to another. Okay, says the next Mishnah. Hamaftir banavi, the one who gets maftir, gets haftorah, hu poris al shema. He should be the one to be Poris al Shema. Poris al Shema is this practice that we mentioned already last week. It involves people who came late or didn't have a minyan, and then they got a minyan, and then they want to say, Kaddish and Baruch Hu and together, and then it seems also there was an aspect of saying the beginning of Shemona Esrei and Kedusha together. So one who gets the Haftorah should also be honored with being Poris al Shema, with leading that half Shema process, and the Gemara is going to ask why. It's going to have two ideas, so we'll leave the reason for now. But the one who gets the Haftorah should be the one to be Poris al Shema. Who over he should also lead the davening. I guess if you're not being Paris al Shema, he's the one to lead the davening, to be the shliach tzibur, the chazan. Who knows he has kapav, and he should be the one to duchen, to do the birkas kohanim, assuming he's a kohen. However, v'imhaya katan, but if he was a child, so then some don't have the language who knows he has kappa, that he duchens, perhaps because more than one person could duchen, can do birkas kohanim, so you don't need to give it to one specific person. Perhaps that's why. So some take that out. Now, v'im haya katan, if he was a child, avivo rabo overing al yado. So meaning if the katan was the one who got maftir, a child is allowed to technically get maftir, not done by Ashkenazim, but a child can get maftir, and if it was a child, so then his father or his rebbe should get, do these other things, like over with Nateva should lead the davening, corresponding to that. Katan kore b'Torah mitargim. Now a katan, a child, is allowed to read the Torah and to be the translator. Aval eno paris al shema, but he cannot be paris al shema. That involves dvar mishabikdusha, where sanctification, baruchu and kaddish and things like that. And that you need to be an adult over bar mitzvah. Ve'eno over l'fnei teva, he can't read the davening. Again, same thing. Includes chazar sashatz, includes all these things that he can't do. Ve'eno no says kapav, and he also should not duchen. If the child is a kohen, it's not proper honor for the tzibur for the child to be blessing them. It seems the practice is that children do sometimes do duchening. It could be that our Mishnah means if there's nobody else. If he's the only one, he shouldn't do it. If there's other people doing it, so then maybe it's okay. Now, a pocheach. A pocheach, Rashi says, is somebody whose feet are uncovered. So somebody who's barefoot. Tosfos has a different pshat. Tosfos says it's it's somebody who's wearing tattered clothes, torn clothes. So either he's barefoot or he's wearing torn clothes. He's not really dressed for davening, basically. So pares es shema, he's allowed to be pares shema. He's allowed to lead that half shema. Umetargim, and he's allowed to be the metargim. He could be the translator for Kriyas Torah. Aval eino kore b'Torah, but he cannot read from the Torah. It's not kavod Torah for somebody who's barefoot or somebody who's in torn clothes to read from the Torah. Ve'eno over l'fnei teva, he should not lead the davening. He should not be the shliach tzibur. Ve'eno says kapav, and he should not duchen. He shouldn't do birkas kohanim. These are out of honor for the tzibur, for the congregation. If he's not dressed properly, then he shouldn't be leading these things. Suma, a blind person, paris shema, umetargim, he's allowed to be paris shema, to lead that half shema. It's not half shema, but this process of the sped up version of Shacharis. Umetargim, and he can also be metargim. He can translate the Torah for people into Aramaic. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol shelo ra me'oros miyamav eino paris al shema. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, if you never saw light in your lifetime, at least somebody who's been blind from birth, should not be paris al shema. Part of being paris al shema involves the bracha over the creation of light. And says Rabbi Yehuda, if a person's blind and has never seen, then they can't lead that blessing. The Tanna Kama, the first opinion, seems to hold that it's fine. Okay. The Gemara, I think, will elaborate more on that on the next Amud. Okay, now going back to the opening halacha of the Mishnah, the halacha was the one who gets the Haftorah should also be paris on Shema. He should over l'fnei teva. He should read the davening. He should. Okay, we had a question about duchen or not. But what's this idea that if you do the Haftorah, you should also read the davening? So my time, what's the reason? So Rav Papa Amar Mishum Kavod. Rav Papa says it's out of his honor. Why? Very interesting. We consider the Haftarah an honor. Rashi says that because a person agreed to something that's not according to their honor, they agreed, okay, they'll do the Haftarah. I'm not sure if it's beneath one's honor because it's from the Navi, not the Torah, or because a child can do it. But there's something not as honorable about it, so you're kind of giving up your honor, so therefore we give you a different honor. We say, okay, you could read the davening. You could, that's an honor. That's the opinion of Rav Papa, that's the reason. Person gave up the reason why we give them to read the davening is because out of honor, they gave up, according to Rashi, they gave up some honor, so we give them this honor. Rabba Barshimi Amar, Rabba Barshimi says, Mishum da'asi linsuye, because otherwise, people are going to fight about it. One guy's going to say, I do maftir, and you read the davening, and it's going to cause fighting. This way it's just easy. Whoever does maftir reads the davening. And they might fight over maftir, I'm not sure, but maybe there's only going to be one fight now, instead of two. One over maftir, one over reading the davening. Now there's just one. Whoever wins gets everything. Now, my beinayu, what would be a practical difference between these two reasons? Again, the two reasons are that either the person gets the haftarah, leads the davening out of honor, because he gave up some honor, we give him honor, or to avoid fighting. So what's the practical difference? What case would be a practical difference? Ika beinayu, a difference will be da'avid bechinam. A difference would be where they don't pay you to lead the davening. So, which is revealing of what we said before. Before, we were saying that they would fight over it. Apparently it was something that you could get paid for. So then, of course, if there's money involved, people will fight over it. So that's why they said, no, whoever gets haftarah just leads the davening, there's nothing to, so we can't fight over it. But if it's a place where they don't get paid to lead the davening, like most places now, so then that will be where there's a difference between these two answers. If the reason is honor, so you should still give it to the person who did the haftarah, because he gave up some honor to the haftarah, we give him the honor of leading the davening. But if it's that they don't come to fight, well, nobody's going to fight if there's no money involved. So we don't have to worry. Okay, Tanan. We're learning a Mishnah, our Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Vim haya katan, if it was a child who got maftir, aviv o rabbo overing al yado. So then, instead of him leading the davening, because he can't, either his father or his rebbe leads the davening. So, if you tell me the reason is because the reason why normally a person who does haftarah gets to lead the davening is because they're going to fight over it. Otherwise, katan bar nitzuyu, is a katan going to fight over it? He's not. He can't even do it. So there's nothing to fight about. So why do we have to give it to? Sorry, 1 second. Right, so the question seems to be, I'm just realizing now that I have a question about this. That's why So let's just speak it out. So if the reason was that we are concerned that people are going to fight, so the child's not going to fight about it. So therefore, we don't have to give him this honor. Well, I would say that we should, because other people are going to fight over it. But okay, but the which is sort of what the Gemara's answer is going to be. But so elamai mishum kavod katan, so mishum kavod. So you're going to tell me that the reason is that because he gave up honor, we need to give him this honor. Katan bar kavodu, or are we concerned about the honor of a child? Is he concerned about his honor? So is it dishonorable for a katan, for a child to get maftir? They're happy to get it. So ella. Ikka kavod aviv v'kavod rabbo. So you'll say, no, the honor of the father and the honor of the rebbe, that we're worried about their honor. Their child got maftir. Again, it's apparently giving up some kind of kavod. So therefore, we have to replace it. We give them the honor of leading the davening. But hacha nami. So it says the Gemara. So hacha nami. Top of the next page. Ikka nitzuye aviv nitzuye rabbo. So here too. If the reason is that we're worried about people fighting, so the people arguing, so the father or the rebbe might also argue over this. So this way, it's a package deal that everybody understands. There's no fighting. That if the child got the haftarah, then the father or the rebbe is going to get to lead the davening, and we don't have to, nobody should fight them over it. So the Gemara doesn't have a clear proof either way. What the reason is the reason out of kavod, to return the person's kavod to them, their honor, or is the reason to prevent any arguments and it leaves the reason in a dispute. Practically, we don't do all this, but lots of interesting customs that they had. Okay.